Welcome back to another episode of Comes the Time. That crystal clear gentleman next to me is O'Teal.
And that's
coming at you.
soon to be crystal clear gentleman. To the other side is Mike. Yeah,
Man,
we
you look
leveled
good.
up here.
Yeah, you did. Boy, oh boy.
I
You
bought
look
myself
fantastic.
an early Christmas present. Well,
Woo.
I'm shooting stuff for my app, and
God, that's so clear.
yeah, Jimmy Rector, who's the wizard behind my app, was like, yeah, man, check this out. And I was just like, oh my God. We went straight to Best Buy.
Yeah.
I was like, why didn't I do this before? So, yeah.
Yeah, and for those of you that watch the episodes, go back to the Victor Wooten episode, and that was like mind-blowingly clear. And this is, I mean, it's wild how clear you are. You look good.
Figured out how to do it a little bit cheaper than that, but yeah, we had our buddies, the Wood brothers, on Oliver and Chris Wood, and just another great talk. They're just remarkable. I love those guys so much, and we have lots of history. You have history with MMW. I go back a long way with them and with Oliver, who has history with Colonel Bruce and Atlanta history. And
there was some type of like it's almost like a starter pack or something growing up in the music that I love, and it was like MMW was kind of like a as far back as I can remember with the Fish stuff and with I remember seeing somebody wearing a T-shirt with their logo.
That logo, yeah.
And it was kind of like, ooh, what's that? And then hearing them and just avant-garde, explorative jazz and a go-go that they did with Schofield is quite possibly one of the best albums I think ever. And I've seen them live a million times. Watching them is like watching alchemists concoct potions on stage. Like, it's just wild what they're doing. Billy Martin's playing, just inventing drums, like putting two things together, and it's just wild how important they were early on, and to be able to see them in like close clubs like Toad's Place and things like that was really great. So to chat with them, and Wood Brothers is a whole other thing. So it's really
when
neat
they met Jono and put had the brothers come back together after. It's a very similar story to me and Kofi, where we didn't play together like in a band together. We obviously played and jammed here and there and stuff, but we'd be on festivals, but we didn't play together for like 11, 12 years, and then got back together later, older and wiser and better. And
it's kind of interesting the way that they put it during this, and not to ruin it for anybody, but I thought that was an interesting thing to think about how you both, sets of brothers, kind of, made your way back to each other, and really super great stuff. I love their music, and it was yet again, just people at that frequency. Chris hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's like, were you in here this morning? Do you know? You hanging out in my brain? Thank you everybody for listening, and enjoy it, and happy holidays. Check out the Wood Brothers if they're coming to your town, and we'll see you soon. Stay safe.
So you guys just started a tour.
We're kind of halfway into a 2-week run, so yeah.
And you go back out after that. Is this the last for the year?
Last for the year, yeah.
All right, then you get to go be home with family.
Yeah, we've been on and off since June, kind of when we started back, after the pandemic, and did a bunch of outdoor stuff and festivals during the summer, and then dove into the indoor shows for the fall.
How was that like on your psyche?
Mixed feelings.
Mixed. I mean, amazing. And on the one hand, like, we missed it, but strange, also just after being so careful and so sealed in a bubble for the whole pandemic, to all of a sudden be in rooms filled with people who most places aren't wearing masks much. And, it was a bit of a whiplash feeling.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people that do care, they genuinely care. But then when they're back out, the exuberance of being back out and alcohol, It all
And
goes
alcohol.
away.
The
And
masks come
comes
off.
Yeah.
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 It's just human nature to just feel good.
Well, and especially when live music or whatever is like your safe place without a
Yeah.
pandemic, when you're there with people and you go, well, these are the people I trust
Totally.
normally,
Yeah.
so it's
Totally.
okay to be around.
Oh yeah,
them.
and at a concert, like everybody puts their, ideally they put their politics aside or whatever stuff. You have differences all come together, and the music is something everybody agrees on and is having fun with. So it's hard not to just dive in full
Yeah.
bore.
Most people, I would assume, I don't know, or if I just speak for myself, I feel a little damaged from the isolation of this pandemic. So,
Yeah.
God, to get together and be with a bunch of people, it's like every cell in your body feels is like, oh my God, I missed this, that feeling. And so, yeah,
Wasn't
you
it?
can get carried
it's
away.
Yeah, you do get carried away. It's kind of funny, like when you're going in for a hug with someone you haven't seen in a long time, and you're past the point of like physics being able to stop yourself, and it's almost kind of like that. It's like a soft car accident.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, I'm going in. This is gonna be dangerous or not, but
Yeah.
we're hugging.
Yep.
It's terrible. I mean, and I think we have to acknowledge how traumatic that is. Because we want that, we need that connection, we need that hug, but then you feel bad about it or scared about it or weird about it in some way. And it's like, that's terrible. Humans are not.
No, I definitely.
We got enough. We have enough inner conflict to deal with. Like, it's like just a simple hug from another human being. Like, come on.
That's the only thing that's keeping me going is those little ones,
Yeah. When going back to performing stand up live, once the clubs opened back up, we had to perform in front of plexiglass, like a penalty box, or like
Really?
the Pope Mobile, and
Like
the
a
way
drummer.
that yes, exactly, and like when the room was the way it was lit, you could see a distorted reflection of yourself looking back at you through the plexiglass. So if you bombed, this weird, critical, like this small kind of garbage pail kid looking version of you is looking back at me going like, you suck. Like it
Wow.
was just so like a visual.
I
that
can't
you
imagine.
never want to see yourself doing stand up
I bet.
performing.
I mean, doing stand up alone just sounds terrifying. I have so much respect for anybody who can do that. And
Thanks.
I mean, as musicians, of course, we deal with self-consciousness and all that kind of mind screw kind of stuff that we do to ourselves. But man, you're up there all by yourself, and then to have yourself staring back at yourself, I can't imagine. That's terrible. That's a cruel joke.
Especially for his
It
personality
really
type. It's like tailor-made hell for
for me. I know, totally. It's the last thing I want to do is see me. But it was like you said. I guess we have to adapt and react.
That's
know?
like
That's
when,
good
when you do. I mean, Oteil, you know this. Like you do big shows where there's a big screen, and you happen to look up, and like the camera is focused on you, and there you are, like 50 feet tall on some screen.
Look away, quick.
You look away. You got to really keep it together. It's like, okay, don't start like feedback looping in your brain. Like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Oh, it's so funny, man.
That's the worst.
Especially
You know
because there's a
what?
delay. And your finger, my fingers are.
Yeah. So let me ask you guys. I always associate you, Chris, with New York, and you, Oliver, with Atlanta. Where are you guys originally from?
Well, we were both born in Pasadena, California, in Los Angeles area, and we moved to Colorado when I was 10 and Chris was 6 or so.
Wow.
Our dad, who is was a great folk musician, guitar player and singer. Interesting topic in itself. But he was by trade a biology professor, a college biology professor. So he got a job at University of Colorado in Boulder. So we moved to Boulder in the late 70s, and really both of us, our formative, I think, memories are from there, from Boulder, Colorado. Yeah,
that's great.
Because when I caught up with Chris, I was like early 90s with MMW. I think the first time I remember was at Planet Earth. in Knoxville, Tennessee, with Chuck Burnley back then, and then but Oliver, I think what is your Atlanta timeline? Because I feel like I was gone when you came there.
No, it was about the same. In fact, it was similar. In fact, I'll tell you, I remember my roommate and I used to go see you and your brother with Chip and Jack Lange and
Alfreda. Whoa, you saw Zeta Rose?
We saw Zeta Rose, and then you and I used to teach lessons at the same guitar store for for a few minutes. But I think the most time that we spent together, Oteil, was I was on tour with Tinsley Ellis while and we did a couple tours with the Rescue Unit.
I do remember. Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's maybe when we spent the most time together. So, yeah. So that was my most. Ago.
That was also my most alcohol-soaked period in life, but for sure I was pickled. Damn it, that's right, Tinsley Ellis, because that's what I was kind of getting to. You know, the connection that we all have to Colonel Bruce, because Colonel Bruce turned me on to MMW and Tinsley Ellis. So that's really how I met both of you guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Didn't the Colonel marry you or something like that, Oliver?
He did, yeah.
Please tell me what brought you to do that.
I don't know. I was just first of all, it was free, so that was good.
Memorable.
I bet he led with that too. I'll do it. It'll be free.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those, it was one of those things where I knew it was going to be either really kooky or completely unremarkable. And aside from him eating just about all of the chicken that was available to the whole place, it was pretty unremarkable. He held a mic and he read our vows, and there was a little bit of feedback and stuff, and it was perfect. I wouldn't change a thing, but it wasn't like something astonishing happened or anything. So
I think the most incredible thing about Bruce is that for someone like me that knows him, like if it's unremarkable, it's just as great, because the threat of something happening is so great that you're like, and then when it's over, you're like, wow, you still get the whole ride.
And it's bad when something happens and you're not expecting it. My wife and I hired an officiant to do our wedding, and she met with us and she said, "Where'd you guys meet?" And we said, "We met online, but that doesn't matter. Like, we don't want that to be a part of the ceremony," because we lied to all of our family members and friends about how we met. It was a little inside joke where we would tell everyone a different story of how we met. And then during the ceremony, the officiant goes, after a long wait to find love, they both decided to go online and fill out a dating profile. And on the video, you hear me go, "Fuck." And I just put my head, and my whole family realizes we just lied to them the whole time. So the whole ceremony was just like us backtracking.
Awkward.
Yeah. Hey, well, if you're a comedian, you
it
get
was
a total
cool,
pass.
whatever.
It's
yeah,
like,
I kind of looked at him like, "Gotcha," whatever.
Yeah.
But boy, it was embarrassing.
Oh man, that's funny. It's like if Andy Kaufman marries you, like if nothing happens, you're still gonna get the
totally
right.
Yeah.
So who is the other? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh no. I just wanted to actually. I don't want to backtrack, but I'm interested in the fact that you guys lived in Colorado before Colorado was Colorado. You know what I mean? Like you were. What was it like? Your memories of Boulder before it was like this mecca. I think Colorado wasn't so like jam packed then, right? And
it was very different. I mean, that was back when. I was just remember. It was just when in high school and you first learn how to drive and you have a girlfriend or something, and you like drive up onto the Flatirons somewhere where you have a nice look and you see Denver way off in the distance, and in between Boulder and Denver was nothing. Like at night it was black, right?
Wow.
There was nothing there. And so it is, and now it's all connected by strip malls and subdivisions and everything. So it's incredible to see that that kind of growth. I mean, it's so explosive, and but and the music scene obviously is unbelievable there, and the support that people have. And if I don't understand all of it, I'm sure legalizing weed there had something to do with the economy and the influx of that kind of scene, and but and then the amazing promoters there like Don Strasberg, and people are just putting so much energy and putting on so much great music. And
Yeah.
it was nothing like that. God, when we were kids, it was just.
Yeah. Plus, we didn't go. I mean, it's not like we went to nightclubs when we were kids. I mean, we pretty much left when we got out of high school, so it's not like we went out and saw shows. I
Yeah.
do remember our dad would take us sometimes to go see things, and I remember actually Hot Rise, the fantastic bluegrass band, they were out of there. That's where they were based, and so we used to go see them sometimes, which is cool because we're still friends with those people
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
today.
What's the guy? Tim?
Yeah, Tim
Tim
O'Brien.
The
O'Brien.
bass player, right?
Oh no, that's
Or what is he? Is he guitar?
that's God,
I always see Tim when we play Boulder because he has that big facility there.
yeah, but it's
Well, that's not Tim. That's the bass player. And now you've made me forget his name too.
his wife is Helen. His wife is
Yes,
Helen.
I'm sorry. Please shoot me, but I'm
But
sure
yeah,
Eric
but
will
anyway,
probably put his name.
That's the guy. He's the one who does E-Town.
Yeah.
E-Town, exactly.
Yeah,
Really sweet guy.
Nick Forster.
Nick Forster. God,
Forster.
thank you. It's early. We're on tour. We just woke up.
That's right.
Sorry.
We're
Totally
musicians.
acceptable.
Sorry, Nick.
This is
Disclaimer.
perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
The
It
tea is
fun-
just kicking in.
But it is funny, like Colorado's a place where, and I've mentioned this to Oteil in the past, where it's like when you look out over, like, let's say Stapleton or an area like North Denver, and you see the world's biggest Bass Pro Shop and the world's biggest famous footwear and all that, and you're like, this was just rolling hills and forest not that long ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes on the East Coast, where most stuff is buildings and there's a lot of light pollution and all that, it's hard to, you maybe forget. But when you go out in such a vast expanse, it's like, wow, wasn't that long ago that this was all natural here. It's wild.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, no forests out there. I mean, it was all just the open plains and
Plains.
Desert.
But I mean, I know for myself, I couldn't wait to get out of there. I was,
really
ambitious young little music nerd who wanted to get out into the world and start a career, and I couldn't wait to get out and go to the East Coast and.
Yeah. No matter where you are, it's like that. Like, it's such a paradise here where we're living. I'm like, my kids are going to be so psyched to get out of here. Like, that's familiarity breeds contempt, and maybe rightfully so. I don't know, but I do want to talk about your dad though, because I always, I love you guys singing, and hearing you. The first time I heard Wood Brothers together, and I heard you singing together, I was like, oh, so. When you say your dad was a folk singer, I'm like, you said that's a whole nother conversation. Let's have that conversation. I want to know about what went into.
He was in that.
Formation.
I mean, if you're like, know anything about sort of the folk scene history, and I'm no expert, but there's that Cambridge, Massachusetts folk scene in the late 50s that was, kind of a hotbed of that kind of culture, that kind of music. And so our dad was at Harvard, and he had a radio show at Harvard, and he had a band called the Raunch Hands. It was sort of like
Ranch Hands.
Well, Raunch. It was the Raunch Hands. It was like tongue in cheek, But they had like a little record deal, and then a young Joan Baez would come, and my dad would do shows with her before she blew up.
He recorded with her too. He's on her first couple records.
Wow. Nice.
So so he was really, really in that scene, and I think sort of coming from such a academic kind of family. So I think he couldn't bring himself to actually fully choose the music career, but I think part of him wanted to. I mean, and now he's retired, but that's all he does is music and write songs, and it was a passion the whole time for sure. And we grew up witnessing him playing and singing every time there was a family gathering or any kind of occasion where he could have a glass of wine and get the guitar out. And it's just, he's one of those guys that just knew so many songs. He just had a great memory for music and for songs. And
he actually when he was in high school, he grew up in St. Louis, and he went to high school with John Hartford, and was in a band with John Hartford. And then, like Chris said, that whole Cambridge scene was kind of the other scene besides Greenwich Village, when the folk implosion, as Bruce used to call it, was happening. And so yeah, but he has that whole repertoire in his head of all the songs that all those people were playing, from Harry Belafonte to Lead Belly to even Hank Williams tunes. Like, he knows tons of that stuff.
And Dylan, I mean, when I first heard the first Dylan record, I was like, oh, our dad would sing that one and that one and that one. There's a bunch of standard tunes on that record that's like, oh, those were just like standards in that scene.
Right. Everybody did those.
And it made it realize, like, oh, our dad was kind of a little bit part of that. I mean, especially singing with Joan Baez.
Do you guys play with him? Because, my kids are young, 3 and 6. I don't push it at all. And Nigel especially doesn't like it if I show him something, like his piano teacher could show him. So I'm very, like, not trying to get my hopes up, but man, if I could play with them one day, I would just lose it. Do you guys, like, play with your dad now?
A little bit, right? We kind of are a little sad we waited so long. But like, in the last few years, like when we play in Boulder, he'll come sit in and we'll get around a big mic and it's pretty great. And he's got Parkinson's now, and he's got arthritis, and he's well into his 80s, so it's a little harder, but he's still pretty sharp. And I wish we had done more and especially recorded more, but we do have a little window of time where we recorded and played together.
That's awesome.
He's still writing songs, and he just sent me a new song. Just like,
that's great. Yeah, my parents are in there. My mom's 85 and my dad's 90, and they don't play, but even if they did, it's like past that time to But it's cool. Hopefully I'll get to do it with my kids.
It's kind of neat.
You'll be able to just make sure you know how to use Logic, because your kids are eventually going to get into that if they're into music at all.
I'm trying to now. Logic is old, and I have to learn Ableton. I'm like, oh my god, I
know you got to learn all that stuff. That's how you jam with your kids, as you learn like Ableton and Logic, and you like make beats together.
Well, I do have a drum kit right there, and that's how I trick them. Is like I'll learn songs that they like, or the drums just kind of attract them. Which also, I need to show you something. It's out of focus, but you see that piece of red tape next to the bass? That's a drum case, like right over the mic stand. There's a little strip.
Yeah.
That's a drum case. That red tape says Wood Brothers. This drum kit was given to me by Falcon. It's the one that was on Zach Brown's truck.
Right.
That he was using when he played with you guys.
Wow.
And he gave me that kit. It's sitting right. And that's what Nigel and Kavi both play.
That's
so we
awesome.
have some little jam sessions in here. I'll put on their favorite songs and then play drums to it and have a dance party.
That's cool.
And then
you just got to put it on YouTube, and then they'll learn from you. Then it'll be cool. It's not you in person. You should go like, yo, check this dude out. He's pretty good. It's
That's
you.
awesome.
Hi, Nigel. This is how you play it. You know
so
what
Oliver,
I think?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know what I think is so neat about, like, we're only a couple minutes into the conversation, and it's Sacramento, or it's California, Colorado. Your dad was at Harvard, Atlanta, New York.
Yeah.
Like, you guys have had such an itinerant. Like, there was no familiarity breeds contempt. You've been all over from early on, which is so important, I think, from an artist standpoint, is that you're not. You hear all these facts about how many people die within like 15 miles of the place they were born and never leave it. And it is pretty awesome when it's like you think.
And
about
then if you're a touring musician for long enough, you start to envy those people. You're like,
absolutely, yeah,
that must be something about that. Like to really feel like you have a home, like a real home. Like I've lost that feeling. I remember realizing like I feel more at home on the road. Like, what's home?
Absolutely, yeah. You look at the crowd sometimes, and you're like, you lucky bastards get to sleep in your own bed.
Yeah.
Well, I never felt at home like as an adult, until like the last probably the last 10 years, 10 or 15 since I met my wife. But I was like, it was like my whole life was just traveling, and I would get at home and feel lost.
Yeah.
Even in my first marriage, I was always like going back out again, it's like, I never got like comfortable. I finally like I got to that place where, and it's just a balance. I know
that's great.
if I had
Congratulations.
that life,
Yeah, it is a
Yeah,
balance.
Thank you.
It is a balance because you got to get out there in the world, but it's good to have a home base that feels that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the
And fam,
career pulls you to be very unbalanced. The
it
road
sure.
does.
goes on forever,
It
and blah
does.
blah. Blah. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
and I
Like,
will say, I mean, the pandemic year and a half, I got really comfy at home to where it was more shocking to go on tour.
Mm-hmm.
Just
mhm.
the being away from home part, was hard.
Yeah, going to bed early was like a
In
treat.
balance. Yeah.
It's like,
I
oh wow, this is how people did it.
I
Yeah.
love it, and I think that's part of this. You hear about all the great resignation they call it, where everybody's quitting. I mean, even people that weren't on the road uh, through the pandemic learned to value their time more than money, apparently,
Yeah.
because they're rebalancing. They're like, nah, man, nah. And
Yeah.
there's such a huge pull that just, embrace the hustle, just
Yeah.
constant,
Yeah.
what did Gary Goldman, we interviewed this comedian yesterday, and he said, it's okay for my art to suffer for me for once instead of me suffering for my art, to
Mm,
get my head back together, to get some new ideas, like just he just stopped
I like
Yeah.
that.
when everything in him was like you can't stop, right?
Right.
And I thought, wow, that's cool. My art can suffer for me a little.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Balance.
Yeah. You have to like learn to value all those different things in your life. Martin, I heard this great interview with Martin Short, and he had this whole number system worked out. And I can't even remember all the subjects, but it was like career, friendship, family, physical health. He had like 9 of them. And then you could rate each one. And so like, okay, well, right now my career's in the toilet, but I'm feeling really good and my connection, my family's awesome. And so overall I'm scoring at like a high B plus,
Wow, I gotta
And
check
so
that out. Yeah,
it's
that's
pretty
amazing.
cool. Actually, I wrote it down somewhere. It's like, I got to use this to like
That's
give
cool.
myself perspective when I'm feeling, microscoping one thing too much,
Yeah.
and got to see the bigger picture.
That's
Man,
good.
Tim, please send that to us through
Yeah.
email or something, because I would like to put that up.
That is
I mean,
Just
that's
cool.
what we need,
Episode
man.
and just on
We
our
need
Patreon.
that. It's
Yeah.
on. It was like one of those interviews. It was either the Conan O'Brien needs a friend interview, or the
Oh,
Smart
okay.
List. I think it was with Conan, or it might have been Smart List. You know that one with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and
Yeah, it's great.
Sean Hayes. Great podcast, and they interview. Anyways, it's from
I'll
that.
write that down.
And that's important because there's a lot of the mental health arm of things definitely kind of became more in the mainstream and more prevalent during all this. But anybody who's in a self-criticizing, like you said, like if you fall into when you focus on one thing, the other 8 things that are maybe going fantastic don't seem like they're even
Yeah.
there, because you
Yeah.
get this
Yeah.
kind of like,
Your critic conveniently ignores all of those.
Yep.
Mhm.
yeah, it's really wild. But
Yeah.
I mean, being brothers and being out together and being able to, like, does that lend some sense of kind of home on the road? Like, you guys are kind of able to. You've always been pretty tight and had like a great relationship working wise and otherwise. You hang out and stuff. You hear a lot of people go on the road and they're like, "Yeah, I'll see you later." And one guy goes to one room, one goes to the other. But you guys
Well, it's
pretty
not
tight.
like the Black Crows, right? But
I guess that's what I'm.
No, it's nothing. It's nothing like that. I mean, really, you know what? Chris and I, in those early days when Chris moved to New York and I moved to Atlanta, and we were involved in completely different music scenes, and we actually really grew apart, like, because we were just, finding our way in these new paths. And so really after 10, 12 years of that, it was the music and putting the Wood Brothers together is kind of what brought us together as brothers again, because we were, we realized, wow, we both do this. We've both gotten pretty good at it. We've both kind of established our identities as humans, as grown-ups and as musicians. Let's join forces. And it was really exciting. And it was the way that we could connect and reconnect as brothers.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
incredible.
exactly me and Kofi's story.
yeah,
Like 11, 12 years apart. We lived in Atlanta,
yeah,
but when I met Colonel Bruce, he kind of went out on the R&B scene, and then we eventually pulled him into our orbit. He got pulled in with Derek Trucks Band. He was with Derek Trucks Band for 15 years. So I played with him. I would see him on festivals. We'd sit in, but we didn't like play in a band together for like a really long time until TTB started.
Yeah.
And so I was so glad to see you guys come together, and especially now that he's gone, like all the brothers I know out there have a super duper special place in my heart. And
I can imagine.
It's great to be as adults, to come back together as adults, like when you figured more of yourselves out. And
definitely.
And you have that shared history and you know, baggage from your parents that you can process, and that's good.
Yeah, and you've also, you know, like, I mean, people talk a lot about brothers bands and all the fighting and all that stuff, and all those stories usually stem from brothers who got together at a very young age and worked together at a young age, right? They hadn't got their asses kicked. They haven't been humbled yet. They don't, you know, like the egos are still fresh and robust and like ready to do stupid, hurtful things. And, you know, so if enough time goes by and you are seasoned, as we like to say, that really is just a euphemism for having your ass completely kicked and humbled. And, you know, so that you just are more grateful for anything that's going halfway decent.
But you still get the benefit of that natural chemistry that cannot be gotten anywhere else.
Totally. Well, that was what was amazing. I think, you know, I mean, we've told this story a lot before, but when Oliver was in the band King Johnson in Atlanta, and so I don't know, back in, I can't even remember the year, 2001 or 2 or something, but there was a double bill where Medeski, Martin and Wood and King Johnson were playing together. And Oliver sat in with MMW, and, you know, with MMW, you know, I felt that chemistry, right? That we had that connection from the beginning, but also because we've been playing together for so long at that point. And, but Oliver sat in and it was just instantly there. And that was like a light bulb moment where it's like, oh, wow. Right.
That's right.
We're related. And we, to the point where we even, our intuition about music, there's something similar there that connects us.
Yeah,
that was so amazing. And then it was kind of the seed that grew this idea, like, okay, we got to do something together. We have no idea what it is, but something.
That's awesome.
You know, so that's how it started, really. And then it was like, well, what do we do? I knew I wanted to do, Oliver is such a great singer and songwriter. And so it's like, okay, we're obviously going to do something based on that. And I have a love for that music too. It's just, I happened to end up with this weird avant funk jazz trio thing that nobody can describe, you know, but what was interesting is that the influences for MMW and the influences that like Oliver had and King Johnson had were like 90 to 95% the exact same influences. It's just they manifested themselves so differently because the different scenes we were in. Like I was with MMW in the New York downtown crazy new music scene, and you know, where jazz meets R&B and, you know, so funk and rock and punk and, you know, all these things just get blended together, but it was all the same music that like Oliver loved. We're all freaks about Ray Charles and Sly Stone and James Brown and Charles Mingus and, you know, so, but it was just the different manifestations of those scenes. So it was actually really natural to come together. And even though the music, the end result is very different than MMW, but the impulse is all there, just the feeling.
Well, and it's interesting too, like you talk about like you guys going out, getting your asses beat and then crawling back at like, brother, let's do this. But also what's cool is like you go, hey, check out all this, the figurative and literal stickers on my suitcase. Look at what New York taught me. Look at what playing at 3 a.m. in the West Village. And then you're like, check out what Atlanta taught me. And now the sound of the two of you together.
Absolutely.
Extremely unique.
Yeah.
It's so great. I love the blending.
Extremely unique. Man, there's moments that, like, Chris, I'll hear a moment of you in a song, in one of your guys' songs, where it's like, there's certain moments in MMW that I, being a New Yorker and kind of working the late night, running around the city and stuff, like, you guys somehow encapsulated the sound of New York City. Like, being in a cab that's passing another cab, like, you could somehow hit that on the guitar, on the bass, or I could hear it with Billy. And when hearing you guys together, there are notes of that I hear in your songs where it's like you're throwing a little northeast, a little
Right.
Yeah.
little spunk into a song that otherwise would be more maybe laid back, more more folk. And I love
Right.
that. You guys brought together. It's like two like rams hitting heads. It's great.
That's like, yeah, that's a good description. I mean, that's exactly, I mean, how I was thinking of it anyways, I always had this like oversimplified fantasy version of it. It's like, what if Charles Mingus and Robert Johnson started a band together? Like,
Yeah.
what would that be like? That's like the North meets the South and the jazz meets the blues, but they're both funky and, like,
Yeah.
and soulful.
Super.
And how would that blend into some new kind of magical sauce?
And you guys do it. I was listening to your solo record, Oliver, the other day. I was cleaning out this room, trying to get it to look like this.
It's good cleaning music.
And
It's good cleaning music.
and it was
That's
so
important.
cool because so many times it just, you have a moment that just stops you. And I just remembered you evoked Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee for me. And I just got that super, it's like a smell, where you smell something, it brings back a really old memory.
Yeah.
And it was cool because like Boca Raton, Florida, while south of Georgia, is not really like the South.
Yeah.
So I still feel like, yeah, it's great how you guys put that together. What was, how did the solo stuff come about? Was it like the pandemic stuff you had
Oh, yeah.
left over
Just-
that didn't get used, or was it
Just tons of free time and access to a cool studio. The Wood Brothers. We co-rented a building with a buddy who's an engineer, and so we actually have our own playhouse and awesome
Nice.
studio. So, and I live really close to it, and we had nothing going on for a year, so it was really just free time and something to do.
Wow, you made good use of it, man.
Yeah, and it was, earlier in the pandemic, and there was still so much paranoia about
Yeah.
even being together in the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had some health issues, and so I was being super careful. Like I had a stroke. It was crazy. I ended up in the
Wow,
hospital
really?
like during the pandemic, and
How did
Oh
I
my
miss
God.
Right
that?
at the
Wow.
beginning.
so
Did you
I
keep
was.
that out of the public, or did I just miss it? That's sad. I missed that.
I mean, it
People
was,
knew.
it was, yeah. I mean, it wasn't like announcing it or anything, but it was just.
Yeah, I got you.
I was just dealing with a lot of crazy stuff, and it made me. And of course, it was early in the pandemic, and so we didn't know if it was related to COVID.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of, like, looking back, I think it was a separate thing. It was a coincidence, but right when I had it, all this information was coming out, and studies, like in the Cambridge Journal of Medicine, about this connection between COVID and cardiovascular events and stroke and stuff like that. And so I was
Pulmonary
convinced, like,
embolisms and-
yeah, I thought, oh my God, I somehow got it. And now I'm in a hospital in the COVID ward with all the, so anyways.
Heavy.
But
yeah.
as a result, I was being really careful. And so we weren't hanging out, like I was so jealous of all these other bands who like had all this incredible, fruitful, creative time together during the pandemic and did all this songwriting. And I was in the middle of that and about to make a big move. I now live up in British Columbia. And so I was moving anyways, I was like, my life was sort of in turmoil at that point. And so Oliver had this very settled pandemic and had a lot of downtime to be creative, I feel. And I was kind of like just swimming upstream to find some kind of stability.
Yeah, you had a lot going on.
That's so interesting because I think that this dynamic, this COVID dynamic, right? The two people who before the virus could have had a completely different relationship or friendship or whatever, and then they differently go through it in however it was presented to us, we had to deal with it, right?
Sure.
And then you come out the other end and you're different people. Now that, and I don't mean you two in particular, but I mean like some folks are like, you look at that other person and you're kind of like, wow, you're not who I thought you were, and I'm not who I thought I was, and we're just all different now, and that's hard. And that's the part that even in the beginning of our conversation, you said like, we all need to like. It's gonna be a long time from now till we fully process like what the hell we're all going through right now.
I have
Huge trauma.
PTSD from it.
Huge.
I definitely have,
Absolutely.
you know, low
Huge
level. I'm
trauma.
not.
Absolutely.
No,
I worry-
and sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it makes me worry about our kids a little bit. Although I feel like they're probably way more resilient than we are.
They absolutely are. I think. Yeah.
And you know, it sounds like we all have kids that are different ages. Chris and I both have a 19-year-old, and then I also have a 13-year-old. So, and then Oteil, your kids are young, and I don't know about you, Mike, but it's like I feel like the kids are experiencing already without the pandemic such a different childhood than we were, as far as the internet and just the way everyday life is so much different. But then throw that all in there. I just wonder what it's not so much what's already happened, but what's coming in the future for the kids. I keep thinking about that. Like, how is it going to be? Yeah, I hope it gets better for them. You know.
But
I
think. Go ahead, sir.
No, I just was gonna say I tell myself that at least when they're older and they're like, we can actually consciously have this talk. I can go. I tried to give you a life where you can remember when Earth was still cool. Before it all went to shit.
Yeah.
You know,
Before it got hot.
Memories. Yeah, before like it's 12 inches of snow in Hawaii and you know,
Yeah.
Fires in
madness
Maine.
we're going through.
Yeah. No, I think that the pandemic, it's really, everyone went into their little own personal zone, and depending on their circumstances before the pandemic, experienced something completely different.
Yeah.
You
Couldn't
know,
put it
some
better.
people who had a stable family life, had a home that they owned, had some money saved, could actually, take a fresh look at their lives, not feel stressed out about how to like make the next paycheck. And then God, I mean, single people versus people who are in a good relationship, mind-blowingly different experiences.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I think like we're not even close to the point where we've come out the other side of it yet to reckon with how different everyone experienced this thing.
Yeah.
And appreciate how different everyone experienced this thing.
Yeah.
even to the point of there were some people who got a slight case of COVID in the beginning, had sniffles and a cough, and they go, this thing's not a big deal. And my wife's working in the intensive care unit, literally seeing the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And from one side, you have a friend going like, yeah, it's like a hangover. Don't worry about it. And then she's like, burn anything you wore outside because it's everywhere and it's around us and it's all this information's coming from 100 different places, and it's like there comes a point where you just kind of like saying I don't know was like the most honest and somehow like respectful thing to say.
Yeah.
Because it's like I don't want to tell you your experience was wrong.
Yeah.
But
We
I'm
don't
seeing
know.
from the other side that it's totally not always the case, and that's what made it so polar. And then throw on top of it.
No wonder there's such a disconnect between people these days, beyond all the other factors we hear about in the news every day, but just the fact that everyone basically isolated themselves and had a completely different experience. It's like we haven't got to the healing yet where we get to understand what each other went through.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I'm
like
still going through texts going off telling me that another person committed suicide. Like literally, it's like a regular
well, like you
thing.
said,
And I'm
Chris,
just like, man,
it
people
all
are
depends on
folding up.
it all depends on where you were before it started. Think
Yeah,
about
and what kind of support.
Think about how
Yeah.
many in your experience of New York City artists, right? That a musician or a comic or a writer that like just like moves to New York and gets a windowless apartment in Brooklyn just to start their dream.
Yeah.
Those people went through the pandemic in a way where like they sat in the windowless on hold with unemployment for weeks and days. I know people who are just like, I don't know what the hell to do. I can't go home because I don't want to kill my family.
Yeah.
I
It's
bet
brutal.
I have a friend down here has left. I mean, I saw a lot of people leave LA, leave New York, leave where they were at, which I thought was good. Like, move, do something for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and just like, but, my buddy Brad Miller, it's really young guy. Was Brad 27, plays 55 bar all the time in that crowd, and just got there. It was like things were going good. Blam! It's got to come. He's actually from here in Florida, in Boca Raton, where I live. So we hooked up through a friend. They gave us his number. But watching him go through all that and like, are you going to move back yet? And, it's just like, it was so heartbreaking to see people that young that like their dream just started and then wow, just
man.
Yeah.
And there's that level of working, not starving artist, but like going up. And things are finally starting to like get to a level where you're like, okay, I have regular work booked 6 to 8 months out, 10 months out, whatever. And then that stuff all closes and those clubs close and those gigs get canceled. And then you kind of like, when you come out the other end, you're like, where do I fit in this thing?
Yeah.
Like, and
how's
where
it
was
been
I?
for you guys coming back? Like, has it been a slower start? It was a real slow build for me. At first, I only went out trio and, was playing for a lot less people and money, like how's it going out there?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like we kind of did ease into it starting in June, and we definitely were just doing outdoor thing, and all the people were in pods, and it felt a little wimpy, but better than nothing kind of feeling. But I don't know.
I mean, we more or less jumped in though. Because we just jumped in with our whole production and our crew and the bus and just went for it. Because I mean, at a certain point, I don't know. Like, I guess we could have tried to jump in a van and like go way old school, but it's been spotty. It kind of, it's no surprise really, but at different parts of the country, you have very different experiences in terms of like people's comfort level with well, here's the thing that's so crazy about it, right? I mean, no matter what you do, you're wrong to somebody.
Yep.
Right. So if we had, so this has been this incredible balancing act is coming back as a touring act, and all touring acts are this is like an old conversation and boring and climbing out. But for people who don't realize it, like to get back on the road, you have to make decisions. Like, are we gonna get in a bubble? Are we gonna get tested? Are we gonna make people who come to the shows get tested or not? Are we going to try to, and it's not all just the band's decision. I mean, promoters are making these decisions, club owners, so there's so complicated and everyone trying to work together and come out with some standard, right? And everyone's making different choices. If we decided, you know what, let's just make it a free for all and not have to deal with people getting vaccinated and not telling people what, some people would be furious. They're like, well, I'm not going to come to a show because I don't feel safe. Okay, so let's put some rules in place to make sure that, people at least are vaccinated or tested. Then a whole nother group of people are going to be furious because they feel like you're telling them what to do. So it's a lose-lose situation.
And they'll also figure out a way around it. So if you say, okay, everybody's going to get vaxxed, you're still standing next to people that aren't, because they figured out a way around it. Like,
so it's sort of this impossible situation where you're trying to figure out what the right thing to do is, not just for yourself, but for for everyone as just like as a society. Like, what's the best thing to do? And I know some bands are choosing to just treat it like that person who got COVID and was mild and no big deal. And like, you know what, we're not even going to test. We're not going to ask people to do anything. They don't even, if they're unvaccinated, fine, come to the show. There's that approach. And some people are doing that and just slogging through it. And then other people are, trying to like impose some protocols and try to make it safer for everyone.
Yeah.
But there's no perfect, there's no perfect way to do it.
And
It's
meanwhile,
right.
every day you wake up and you see another tour is being cut short.
Yeah.
Because a band member got it.
Yeah.
And then people don't think about the staff at these venues that are going home to maybe
but sometimes the staff ain't thinking about the staff.
Yeah.
We played a bunch of places where the staff refused to get vaccinated.
Right.
Right.
What do you do then when they don't care?
Yeah.
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 Well,
We didn't
and
play a
it's,
bunch of places, but
and as you know, to get a tour out in the road is a very expensive thing. I mean,
Yeah. There's a lot
to
of
have
planning
the
involved.
gear and the crew and the bus, and so to have a tour canceled in the middle
Affects a
is
lot of
really
people.
expensive, and we're already financially crippled from the pandemic, right? And in this industry, many industries, of course, but just since we're talking about this,
obviously.
so the idea of your tour getting canceled, and you're depending on that money to just get things up and running again, just get the machine going again. It's devastating. And so it becomes very emotional. Like if you feel unsafe in a situation, it's because, hey, this is not just me. It's like this whole tour could get canceled.
Yeah.
And that affects my crew. It affects my manager. It affects everybody connected with the organization who's going to get paid because we're doing a show.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not just us, right? And
You got to think of it. And it's so huge. Just knowing like that booking agents have had like the worst time. Those poor booking
miserable.
agents who, think about that. And of course, venues that have folded or gone under or been bought up by larger corporate entities or whatever. It's just it's all connected, and it's huge. You can lose some sleep on it. Like if you're the one who feels sick and you're like, we might have to cancel this tour because I've got sick, and that sucks for a lot of people.
Yeah, if you get as much as a tiny headache, you just start like, oh God, should I test?
Get away from me.
I got a migraine on the road and they tested me. I was like, I just have a headache. Or like,
that's one of the symptoms.
That's swab him.
Did you guys have this happen to you where one good thing about that, we, of course, huge tour. Nobody wants to be the one that gets infected, especially not Florida boy over here, right?
Yeah.
So, like the specter's hanging over all our heads. But a good thing happened. We never, you probably wouldn't have this anyway because you guys are so awesome, but we never had an off night. Because it was literally that thing like tonight might be the last gig.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like, oh, John sneezed. Oh, it's the last gig.
Yep. Let's make it a good one.
Oteil's got a migraine. Oh, we literally, like, everybody said it's hands down the best tour we ever did.
Wow.
So at least we got that,
but that's super cool. I'm glad you said that because I thought our last tour was one of the best ones maybe ever, and I didn't really connect it to that, but at the last day of our tour manager, front of house guy, did test positive, and he had to split, and it was the last day of tour though, and we limped through that last day, but it was a great tour. But I never thought of it in those terms, like anything it takes to make you appreciate each time you get to do this that is a big positive.
It makes you it puts you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
And which is another way of saying you're paying attention.
Exactly.
You are paying attention. And that is, as we all know, because we've been doing this long enough, that's what makes you play good. That's what makes a good show, is like simple act of paying rapt attention to what's happening around you and feeling present. Gratitude about it, like just like being grateful, like, oh my God, I get to do this instead of
fun.
Instead of like, you can have lots of negative thoughts too, like, oh, the sound sucks and I hate this venue, or, you can go down that rabbit hole. But when something like this is happening, you tend to look at the positives and how lucky we are.
Oteil, I can't imagine. I mean, on the level that y'all are doing it, it's even like exponentially more intense than it is for us. Like, we have 8 people on the road. You guys have so many. I just can't imagine. You do not want to be that guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have this group. I mean, I really feel like it's brought our bubble. We are tight, man. When we're on tour together, that's a family that just sticks together, takes care of each other, and
it made me realize that, when we were sitting, because our crew is really big. And I was just like, we have always had such a great crew. They're the best. And the fact that we got 31 dates, man, and nobody effed around. Like
That's
we have a
amazing.
perfect record. Yeah, we were watching tour after tour.
Yeah.
And so your
Yeah.
anxiety level goes up.
Yeah,
But
you
then
just feel like it's a matter of time,
we're
but you
just
can
like, I know somebody's gonna. And then I was hearing stories. I won't mention any names of people that were being very cavalier
Yeah.
with big tours, and I was like, wow.
why?
Now I remember when I might have been that guy.
Yeah.
It's just selfishness. It's just seeing, and I thought, so how do I do this when there's not a pandemic, when there's not a threat of, and it's a little easier just because of my age, because so many people die. Like, before Kofi died, the thought occurred to me, like, every time someone dies, I think about the last gig I played with them. And if O'Teal from the future could have said, this is the last gig you're ever going to play with that person, right?
Yeah.
How would it have changed it? You would have had more rapt attention, right?
Absolutely.
Like, how can we bring that into when all this, well, it probably won't wear off, but if it does wear off, hopefully, how do we keep that, bringing that back up into our face?
I think about that all the time. I think about that stillness that we were forced into during the pandemic, and how, like, when we were with our families, we appreciated on a new level, and there was a certain gratitude for each day. And I think about that all the time as we start to get going again touring. How do you hold on to that and make that normal, like just make that a daily practice of being really present.
Yeah.
And it is hard, and it is great.
That's why people make religions.
Well,
you know what I mean? It's just a ritual. Like, it all goes bad,
it's
right?
a ritual.
But you make a ritual to remind yourself, like,
that's
hey.
it. That's you just said it. The hardest thing about it is remembering to do it.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
That's
Chris
why
does it every day. Chris does it every day. He makes toast every morning. That's his jam.
Well, I mean, you have to work on it, and working on it is simply another way of saying remembering that it's an option.
Yeah.
To, like, you can either pay attention to all the crazy crap going on in your brain, or you can pay attention to, like, what's happening right now. It's that simple choice. But our brains are so distracting that we usually, like, veer in that direction.
That's the human nature part. That's why I think it's so important. Like, I never push religion, but I push, like, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because it's good to remind yourself, because it is a fact that it's our human nature to forget.
Yeah.
And to become complacent, and to become, just expect that this is getting there. Or else why would we start complaining about little shit, like.
Right.
Yeah, we have, like, this organ in our skull that makes up stories that are they're lies. Every one is a lie.
But
every single one.
Yeah, no, you're right.
What if I told Mike the other day his critic was getting him, and I said, my sister has a saying, the devil is a liar. Yeah. And I said, it's a shame that it got off base, because it's a really convenient thing to just go, lies, all lies.
All lies.
The father of lies. Just don't believe. So when the lies come, just go, lies.
Yeah.
But
Chris,
somehow we start believing it,
Yeah, that's a thing that some of us deal with, like, from the morning we wake up till the minute we go to bed, is that
absolutely.
And it's through certain practices or through whatever of, like, quieting that, like, we realize that there's the ways to remember is a very important road to, and in listening to you guys talk about, like, the tours and all that, and I think about the comedy clubs in New York City that I do, and how grateful I am of the staff and the management and the things like that. They went out of their way to go, okay, we want to make an event for these people to come forget about their experience. We want to give the comics a safe route to do it. Meanwhile, we need to somehow stay safe too. And they're selfless in trying to make this happen, and to take a moment and just kind of, like, look at them and go, wow, like, you guys are creating a way for me to work.
They're risking their lives to do it.
Yeah, and sometimes gratitude, I hate saying, we need a new word for trumps as a
no, let's not let them have it.
Gratitude trumps the fear. Gratitude trumps the critic, and like, sometimes looking at those people and just going like, thank you so much for giving me a chance to do this again.
Yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
part, I mean, is it, these new venues popped up out of nowhere. Forest Hills in Queens, Westville Music Bowl in New Haven, like all these great outdoor spots popped up and all of that. And it's just every so often to take a look at the folks that are.
Yeah. But you just said it too. It's like, in order to have gratitude, you got to pay attention.
Yes.
Otherwise,
yes.
So like, I mean, just to like take it down to like a microcosm of, you're on stage. All musicians know that feeling when you're starting to feel insecure about something, or like, am I good enough, or what should I play next? And the antidote for me, which I try to work on, it's like my meditation, is like, the only thing that cures that is just paying attention to Jono and Oliver and what they're playing on stage. And then I realized, like, oh, as long as I just listen to them, it informs me of everything I should do in the next moment.
Yeah.
So if I stop just thinking about which is, this is like obviously an old subject, but it's so simple. I just listen to Jono and Oliver, or if I want to sing more in tune, instead of being self-conscious about my voice, I just listen to Jono and Oliver.
Yeah.
And then somehow my body knows what to do. Or if I'm worried about playing in rhythm, I just listen to Jono and Oliver, and somehow they tell me how to play, and so it's just that paying attention thing. It's so stupidly simple.
Yeah.
But it
gets
rid of so much crap.
So much crap. That's like Bukowski said, don't try, right?
That's a
Absolutely.
always come back to the podcast. Things that are super simple but super difficult.
Yeah.
It always comes back. And that's why we remind ourselves and make these rituals to remind ourselves of these super simple things that are difficult.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but it's like, it's not complicated.
Yeah. But
do you remember how Colonel Bruce would say, never focus, which sounds kind of like contrary to what we're talking about, but I get it in a different way, which is, don't focus on thinking, it's focusing on the wrong thing. It's just be in that moment. Don't focus on things that are not here and now.
Right, dude, there's athletes that are paying coaches who are just teaching them that.
Yeah.
Enormous amounts of money. I talked to this guy. He was like a music lawyer guy in Birmingham, Alabama. And they took me out on the golf course. I just don't like golf. But, they were talking. He's like, talking about how much thousands of dollars he was spending on his son to teach his son to not think while he's hitting a stroke, and I was like, that's so Colonel Bruce, man. Like, if you could just be in the moment, it just be flowing in it,
Well, I mean, Chris, you said it. This thing just produces light. Like, we have an organ that works against us.
That's the angel and devil thing. It's us. We're the angel. We're the devil. We're the that's the big conflict. It's all happening right in here.
I mean,
makes good art, guys. Makes good art.
It does.
Yeah. Thank God that we get something good out of it.
It makes the life of the artist a disaster. But it's
Speaking of not to backtrack, but I pulled this up when you guys said something a long time ago, but just about when you're touring around in different regions of the country, experience the pandemic differently. I experienced that just in Florida, because in where I live in Boca Raton is just a little blue bubble in Florida, right?
Okay.
So our first gig we did was in Suwannee. We drove because nobody's gonna fly, We drove up to Spirit of Suwannee, and as soon as we had to pull over for gas, it was just like, oh shit, nobody believes in masks. And defiantly, like, I dare you to say something about me.
Right.
But you know what I mean? Like the North Florida thing, I was like, you can't get mad. You should have stayed home. So I got on the plane to go into Denver. It's my first gig after Dead and Company tour is over. And I don't know if you could see it if I go up close yet because it's blurred. But a guy's wearing this T-shirt. It's on the plane, comes by me, unmasked, unvaccinated, unapologetic, and unafraid. And I was like, I had one more that I wanted to say to him, but I didn't want him to shoot me. I just thought, wow, That's the first thought I have is like, I really wish I could fly private now. It's numb nuts down here.
Is there any room in the cockpit?
Yeah. So I wish you guys really good luck out there, and hopefully you don't run into too many of these guys.
Well, and you're coming up to the Northeast in late January, early February, and I plan on coming to check you guys out.
All right.
Please do. Please
Are you coming this way at all?
You know, we just were, Oteil. We were down in Ponte Vedra and Ocala and Key West. We even played Key West.
Hollywood.
Oh man, Hollywood's
Hollywood,
right
Florida,
by me.
I didn't realize that you lived in Boca.
Yeah, I didn't realize that
should
either.
Especially since we were about to do this, we should have reached out. I didn't realize that's where you were. I didn't know where you were.
Yeah.
So next time we'll have to connect.
You know,
How long ago was it that you were there?
Last week. I mean, we're on our way north. Back from there, basically.
I got you.
what I'm excited about is one of the spots you're gonna hit is College Street Music Bowl in New Haven, which was once the Palace Theater, which I saw MMW at, and I think it was maybe in the Uninvisible, perhaps, but the building was falling apart. It was like I had seen some shows where the shows were so loud that pieces of ceiling were coming down in the balcony.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like an old theater, and then it laid dormant for like a very long time, and then someone bought it, resurrected it, and now
Right.
it's this gorgeous spot. So I'm so excited to see you again there.
Cool.
Couple decades,
Awesome.
20 something years later, and
Nice.
Well,
so
make sure to reach out and say hello.
Yeah, man.
I would love to, man. Yeah, no,
Please
thank
wear
you.
a mask.
I'll wear two. I'll wear one for each of you. So my mask
hey-
does wear a mask. So
Tell everybody about your new record, Oliver. Your solo record, where we can get that.
Oh, it's not entirely new anymore. It's a few months old, I guess, but it's called Always Smiling, and it's available streaming anywhere, and it's available on vinyl, and it's available at the Wood Brothers website and my website, oliverwoodmusic.com.
Excellent. You guys
And
go.
I'll drop this in here because almost as recent was our latest Wood Brothers record, which we dropped right before the pandemic, so we barely got to tour on it. So it feels like we're touring it right now.
it's so
And
good.
that album is called Kingdom in My Mind.
I love you. I love those names and your lyrics and everything, man. And I love both of you guys. I have to
thank you,
run
guys.
myself because I have to do some filming for my.
Yeah, get some rest. You guys
Yeah.
just checked in, so
Yeah, but thank you
Enjoy
for
those
giving us your
hotels.
time and coming in so early. It's an hour
Glad it worked
even
out.
earlier where those guys are, so we appreciate
No
it.
worries, no worries. Thank you, Oteil, and Mike.
Yeah, man.
It's a pleasure. It's a fun talk.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for the music is medicine for quite a few of us. So just thanks for
good.
everything that you guys do for all of us too. So
Thank you, guys.
no, it's
Excellent.
appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, best of luck.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Take care,
ya.
guys.